There was a time in the morning, before the sun had fully claimed the sky, when the house belonged to Daddy. The rest of the family might still be sleeping or just beginning to stir, but Daddy was already up, already moving through a ritual so precise and so consistent that you could set your clock by it. The bathroom light was on, the door slightly open, and the sounds drifting out told you everything. The splash of water in the sink, the scrape of a razor against skin, the click of a pomade jar being opened. If you were lucky enough to be awake, if you crept down the hallway and peeked through that crack in the door, you witnessed something sacred, a black man preparing himself to face the world. Before we dive into these memories, if you're new here, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss another trip down memory lane. And as you watch, drop a comment below sharing your own memories of watching your father or grandfather get ready for work. We love hearing your stories, and they make this community so special. If you grew up black in America during the 1950s, 1960s, or 1970s, you know exactly what that morning ritual looked like. You remember the smell of shaving cream and aftershave mixing in the steam. You remember the careful attention Daddy paid to every detail, from the part in his hair to the shine on his shoes. You remember understanding, even as a child, that this was not vanity. This was armor. Daddy was preparing for battle, and his appearance was his first line of defense. This is the story of the black father's morning ritual. The story of the tools he used, the care he took, and the lessons he taught without saying a word. The morning began in darkness, or near darkness. Daddy's alarm clock, maybe one of those old wind-up types with the bells on top, or maybe just his internal clock honed by years of early rising, would pull him from sleep while the rest of the household remained still. He moved quietly, not wanting to wake anyone, though the sounds of his routine were so familiar that they blended into the background of family life. The first stop was the bathroom, the site of the most intensive preparation. In households where there was only one bathroom, Daddy claimed it first, his priority understood and unquestioned. The light would flicker on, harsh against the early morning darkness, and the ritual would begin. For children who woke early, whether by accident or design, the cracked bathroom door was an invitation. You might stand in the hallway, watching through the gap, studying the series of movements that transformed your father from a man in his undershirt to a man ready to meet the world. These observations were education, though you did not know it at the time. You were learning what it meant to be a man, what it meant to take pride in your appearance, what it meant to prepare yourself with intention and care. The shave was the centerpiece of the morning. Ritual, an act that required skill, patience, and the right tools. Black men's skin presented particular challenges for shaving. The curly nature of the hair meant that ingrown hairs and razor bumps were constant threats. A careless shave could leave a man's face irritated and painful for days. A careful shave, executed with the right technique, left skin smooth and healthy. The tools of the shave were laid out with precision. The razor itself might be a safety razor, the kind with a single double-edged blade that screwed into a metal handle. Some men preferred straight razors, those intimidating folding blades that required even more skill to use safely. The blade had to be sharp. A dull blade pulled at the skin and caused irritation. Serious shavers replaced their blades frequently, understanding that a few cents saved on blades meant days of discomfort. The shaving brush was essential. Made of badger hair or boar bristle, it was used to work the shaving soap or cream into a thick lather. The brush lifted the hairs away from the skin, preparing them to be cut cleanly. A good lather was warm and thick, cushioning the blade and allowing it to glide smoothly. Many men heated their lather, either by running hot water over the brush or by using a special heating device, because warm lather softened the beard and opened the pores. The shaving cream or soap was chosen with care. Some men preferred the canned foams that became popular in the mid-20th century. Barbasol, Gillette Foamy, Rice. Others stuck with traditional shaving soaps that came in wooden bowls, worked into lather with a wet brush in a circular motion that became meditative with practice. The soap had a clean, masculine scent that mixed with the steam from the hot water to create an atmosphere that was distinctly the domain of the morning shave. Daddy would study his face in the mirror, assessing the terrain he was about to navigate. The growth from yesterday needed to be removed. The trouble spots, the areas prone to irritation or ingrown hairs, needed special attention. He knew his own face intimately, every curve and angle, every spot where the razor needed to move with particular care. The first stroke of the razor was always deliberate. Starting usually at the sideburns or cheeks, Daddy would draw the blade downward in the direction of hair growth. Short strokes, rinsed frequently in the sink full of hot water, ensured the blade stayed clean and effective. The sound of the razor against stubble was distinctive, a soft scraping that announced progress. For black men, the neck was often the most challenging area. The hair there grew in different directions, and the skin was sensitive. Many men shaved the neck last after the blade had been warmed by use, and the technique had been refined by the earlier passes on less challenging terrain. Some avoided shaving the neck altogether against the grain, knowing that doing so invited razor bumps that could persist for days. After the shave came the aftershave, and this was where the morning took on its most memorable scent. The aftershave served practical purposes. It was antiseptic, closing any tiny nicks and preventing infection. It was astringent, tightening the pores. It was soothing, calming skin that had just been scraped by a blade. But beyond the practical, aftershave was identity. A man's aftershave was part of his signature, the scent that his family associated with his presence. The brands of the era were iconic. Aqua Velva in its distinctive blue bottle with a scent that was cool and bracing. Old Spice, perhaps the most famous of all, with its nautical theme and spicy sweet fragrance that became synonymous with fatherhood for millions of Americans. Brute in its green medallion bottle promising masculine sophistication. High Karate, which advertised itself with humorous commercials, suggesting the scent was so irresistible that men needed to know self-defense to fend off attracted women. English Leather, Clubman, Pinot, each had its loyal devotees. Daddy would splash the aftershave into his palms, that distinctive sound of liquid hitting skin, and then pat it onto his freshly shaved face. The sting was immediate, a brief burning sensation that signaled the aftershave was doing its work. Then came the cooling, the tightening, the clean feeling that announced the shave was complete. The scent would fill the bathroom and drift into the hallway, an olfactory announcement that Daddy's preparation was progressing. The hair came next, and for black men in the 1960s and 1970s, hair was a statement. The options ranged from the close-cropped conservatism preferred by many working men to the afro that became a symbol of black pride and cultural identity. Whatever the style, the preparation required products and technique. Pomade was the essential product for many black men's hair care routines. These thick, often petroleum-based products provided hold and shine, keeping hair in place throughout the workday. The pomade jar was a fixture on bathroom shelves and bedroom dressers. Murray's Superior Hairdressing, in its distinctive orange tin, Duke Hair Grease, Royal Crown, or any of dozens of other brands that competed for black consumers' loyalty. The application of pomade was its own ritual. A small amount was scooped from the jar with the fingers, then rubbed between the palms to warm it and make it pliable. Starting at the scalp, the pomade was worked through the hair systematically, ensuring even distribution. Too little pomade and the hair would not hold its shape. Too much and it would look greasy and feel heavy. Finding the right amount was a matter of experience. After the pomade came the comb or brush. The part, if there was one, was established with care. A straight line dividing the hair, positioned exactly where Daddy wanted it. The comb teeth moved through pomaded hair, arranging each strand into its proper place. Some men followed the comb with the brush, using the bristles to smooth the surface and add additional shine. The goal was hair that looked intentional, controlled, professional. Hair that announced its owner took himself seriously. For men who processed their hair, the morning routine was somewhat different. The process, or conk, hair that had been chemically straightened, required maintenance to keep it looking its best. These styles were popular among some black men in the 1950s and into the 1960s, though they became less fashionable as the natural hair movement gained strength. Men with processed hair used different products and techniques, but the underlying commitment to appearance was the same. The wave cap or do-rag was often part of the nighttime routine, worn during sleep to maintain wave patterns or to keep hair in place. In the morning, the cap came off to reveal hair that had been trained overnight into the desired configuration. A quick brush, a touch of pomade, and the waves or the straightened hair was ready for the day. By the late 1960s and into the 1970s, the afro had become a powerful symbol of black identity and pride. Men who wore afros had their own morning rituals, picking out the hair to achieve the desired fullness and shape, using afro sheen or similar products to add shine and moisture. The afro pick, with its long teeth and often a handle shaped like a fist, was both tool and symbol, sometimes worn in the hair as a statement of identity. The clothing was the final element of the transformation, and it was chosen with care that matched the attention paid to face and hair. For black men heading to professional jobs, the suit was armor. It announced competence, respectability, and seriousness of purpose. In a world that was quick to dismiss black men, the suit demanded a second look, a moment of recognition that here was someone who meant business. The suits of the era had their own characteristics. The lapels might be narrow in the early 1960s, then grow wider as the decade progressed and into the 1970s. The colors ranged from conservative navy and charcoal to bolder browns, greens, and even patterns as fashion evolved. Polyester blends became popular for their durability and ease of care, though traditional wool remained the mark of quality. Daddy's closet held his work wardrobe, each suit hung with care, often covered with a garment bag to protect it from dust. The shirts were organized by color, the ties hung on a special rack or rolled in a drawer. The selection of each day's outfit might happen the night before, with Daddy laying out his clothes to save time in the morning. Or it might happen in the moment, a quick assessment of what was appropriate for the day's particular challenges. The shirt had to be pressed properly with sharp creases and no wrinkles. In many households, this was work that Mama did, standing at the ironing board the night before or early in the morning, making sure her husband left the house looking immaculate. The iron moved across white cotton or light blue broadcloth, steam hissing, transforming wrinkled fabric into crisp professionalism. Some men did their own ironing, taking pride in the skill and the independence it represented. The tie was knotted with practiced fingers. The four in hand, the half Windsor, the full Windsor, each knot had its proponents, its appropriate context, its particular look. A man learned to tie his tie by watching his father or another male relative, standing before the mirror and making the same movements until they became muscle memory. The tie was adjusted, the knot centered perfectly, the length checked to ensure it fell at exactly the right spot relative to the belt. Cufflinks and tie clips added finishing touches for those who wore them. A watch was strapped to the wrist, perhaps a Timex for everyday wear, perhaps something finer for special occasions. A wedding ring was already in place, never removed. A pen was slipped into the shirt pocket. Each accessory was chosen with intention, contributing to the overall impression of a man who paid attention to details. The shoes were crucial, and they had received their own preparation, usually the night before. Shoe shining was a skill passed down from father to son, a weekend ritual that ensured shoes were ready for the week ahead. The supplies were stored in a box or bag, polish in the appropriate colors, a brush or soft cloth for application, another brush or cloth for buffing to a shine. The process of shining shoes was meditative. Old newspapers were spread to protect the floor or table. The polish was applied in small circles, working into the leather, covering scuffs and replenishing color. Then the buffing began, vigorous back and forth motions that generated heat and friction, bringing up a shine that announced care and attention. The best shoe shiners could achieve a mirror finish, leather so glossy you could almost see your reflection. Daddy's shoes were lined up in the closet or stored in boxes, each pair maintained and ready. Work shoes in black or brown, matching whatever suit might be chosen. Perhaps a pair of dress shoes for special occasions, even more carefully maintained. The shoes told a story before a word was spoken. Here was a man who respected himself, who understood that every detail mattered. The sounds of Daddy getting dressed were their own kind of music. The slide of a tie through a collar, the snap of suspenders being adjusted, the zip of a zipper, the click of a belt buckle, the soft thuds of shoes being put on. These sounds, drifting from the bedroom, announced that the transformation was nearing completion, that the man who would face the world was almost ready. The final check happened in front of whatever mirror was available. Perhaps a full-length mirror on the closet door, perhaps a smaller mirror on the dresser. Daddy would study his reflection, making minute adjustments, straightening the tie, smoothing a lapel, checking that the shirt was properly tucked, that the belt was centered, that everything was exactly as it should be. This was not vanity. This was quality control. The man in the mirror was the man the world would see, and that man needed to be beyond reproach. The briefcase or lunch pail was the final accessory. Professional men carried briefcases, leather satchels that held papers and documents, and whatever else the workday required. Working men carried lunch pails, metal containers that held sandwiches prepared by wives in the early morning hours. Maybe a thermos of coffee, maybe a piece of fruit. Either way, the container was part of the image, part of the announcement of purpose and identity. Daddy might pause at the door for a final word with the family. A kiss for mama, a pat on the head for the children, a reminder to be good and do well in school. Then he was gone, stepping out into the world, armored in his careful preparation, ready for whatever the day might bring. For the children who had watched the ritual, something had been transmitted. They had seen what it meant to prepare with intention. They had learned that appearance mattered, not for shallow reasons, but because the world made judgments, and those judgments had consequences. They had witnessed their father's discipline, his attention to detail, his pride in presenting himself as a man worthy of respect. The context for this ritual was the reality of being a black man in mid-20th century America. The world outside the door was not always friendly. Employers looked for reasons to dismiss. Colleagues might be quick to criticize. Society was structured to diminish black achievement and deny black dignity. Against all of this, the morning ritual was a form of resistance. A black man in a pressed suit with a fresh shave and polished shoes made a statement that could not be easily ignored. He announced his competence through his appearance. He demanded to be taken seriously by presenting himself seriously. Every detail of his preparation was an argument for his worth, evidence submitted before the court of public opinion. This was not about seeking white approval. It was about strategic self-presentation in a hostile environment. The armor of the well-dressed black man was protection against the slings and arrows of racism, a way of navigating a world that was too often looking for excuses to deny and dismiss. For working-class black men, the morning ritual was adapted to different circumstances, but was no less meaningful. The man who worked in a factory or on a loading dock might not wear a suit, but he still prepared with care. Work clothes were clean. Mama made sure of that. Work boots were sturdy and maintained. Hair was cut close and neat. The shave was just as careful, the aftershave just as essential. The blue-collar morning ritual acknowledged that dignity was not dependent on the type of work being done. A man who loaded trucks could take just as much pride in his appearance as a man who sat behind a desk. The preparation announced that this was a man who respected himself and his work, who showed up ready to do the job well, who carried himself with the same pride, regardless of his position in the economic hierarchy. Many black families had men working both kinds of jobs. Perhaps the father worked in a factory while an uncle or older cousin worked in an office. Children observed both versions of the morning ritual and understood that while the clothes might differ, the underlying principles were the same. Take care in your preparation. Present yourself with pride. Meet the world as a man who knows his own worth. The products used in the morning ritual were purchased from specific specific places, and this too was part of the culture. The black barber shop sold many of the hair care products men needed. Pomades, hair grease, aftershaves. Black-owned drugstores and variety stores stocked the brands that black consumers preferred. Some products were available in mainstream stores, but others required seeking out shops that catered specifically to black clientele. The brands themselves were part of black culture. Murray's Hair Pomade had been founded in 1925 and was a fixture in black households for decades. Royal Crown, Duke, and others competed for market share in the black hair care industry. These were black businesses or businesses that depended on black consumers, and purchasing from them was an act of community support as much as personal grooming. The advertising for these products often appeared in black publications like Ebony and Jet, magazines that sat on coffee tables in black households across America. The ads featured well-groomed black men looking successful and confident, providing both aspiration and instruction. This is what you could look like. This is how you could present yourself. These are the tools to get there. The lessons transmitted through the morning ritual were not spoken aloud, but they were absorbed nonetheless. Boys who watched their fathers prepare learned that being a man meant taking responsibility for your presentation. They learned that details mattered, that shortcuts were visible, that pride expressed itself through care. They learned the specific skills, how to shave, how to tie a tie, how to polish shoes, but more importantly, they learned the underlying values. Many men can trace their own morning rituals directly back to their fathers. They use the same aftershave, or one that evokes the same memories. They part their hair on the same side. They tie their ties with the same knot. These continuities connect them to men who may no longer be living, maintaining bonds that transcend time and death. For men whose fathers were absent, the morning ritual might have been learned from grandfathers, uncles, older brothers, or other men in the community. The barbershop was another site of instruction, a place where boys could observe multiple versions of black masculinity and grooming. The community ensured that even without a father in the home, boys had access to the knowledge and modeling they needed. The world has changed since the 1960s and 1970s, and the morning ritual has changed with it. Electric razors have replaced safety razors for many men. Casual dress codes have made the suit less essential for daily wear. Hairstyles have evolved through multiple fashions, but the underlying principles, the importance of presentation, the dignity of preparation, the pride expressed through care, these persist. Today's young black men may prepare differently than their fathers and grandfathers did, but they are still preparing. They are still making statements through their appearance. They are still armoring themselves against a world that does not always recognize their worth. The specific tools have changed, but the fundamental act remains the same. For those of us who remember watching our fathers prepare for work, those early morning observations remain precious memories. We remember the sounds and smells of the bathroom. We remember the concentration on Daddy's face as he shaved. We remember the transformation from the man in his undershirt to the man in his suit, polished and ready. We remember knowing, even as children, that we were witnessing something important. Those men are mostly gone now, passed on to whatever reward awaits, but their lessons live on in us. Every time we prepare with care, we honor them. Every time we pay attention to details, we continue their legacy. Every time we meet the world as men who know our own worth, we carry forward what they taught us in those early morning rituals. What do you remember about watching your father or grandfather prepare for work? What products did he use? What sounds and smells do you associate with those mornings? What lessons did you learn without being taught? Share your memories in the comments below. Let us honor together the men who prepared with such care and the rituals that shaped us. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and ring that bell so you never miss another journey into the beautiful past that made us who we are. This is our story. This is our father's legacy. This is the morning ritual that taught us what it meant to be men.